Look at this! This cactus only blooms once a year and lasts only one day. When the flower opened, I knew I wanted to study it to paint it. I spent the whole day photographing and filming it so I wouldn't miss any detail. What struck me the most was its duality. How could something so fragile and inviting grow from a body covered with sharp thorns? I felt an immediate connection to that contrast, but translating that feeling into a painting has its own challenges. Now the bloom has already disappeared and all I have to work with are the images I shot and the impressions I have. Will I be able to capture the duality of this plant while maintaining its unity? In this piece I'll try to capture both sides while keeping it a whole being, and I'll show you the choices that help me bring that idea to life. The first sketch I did was a graphite drawing to study the plant. I selected one of the reference photos where the flower stem was visible enough to show that the flower and the cactus belong together. Without the stem, it might look as if they were different plants and the flower was simply placed in front of the cactus. I chose a horizontal photo, although I wasn't sure it would be the best orientation for the final piece. The composition was simple, and I left most of the vase out of the frame to focus on the plant itself. I drew the cactus and the flower at the same size on the page because I wanted them to have equal importance. But looking back, I don't think it was the best option. Due to perspective, it actually made the cactus look larger than the flower, which wasn't my intention. I'll test different compositions in the next studies. One day, on my way to the city, I took my sketchbook with me and showed the drawing to a few strangers I met on the street. The feedback was very positive, and they immediately noticed the duality in the plant, which was exactly what I was hoping for at that stage. For my second sketch, I switched to a vertical orientation. I decided to crop parts of the plant from the composition as if we were seeing it through a window, and I think this will work better in the final piece. Inspired by the yin-yang symbol, I decided to add a gradient background from dark, behind the flower, to white, behind the cactus. The contrast between the flower and the cactus would become even more visible with this type of background. I worked in graphite again, testing this new composition, but I was already planning to add some color in the next study. That's why I started doing some swatches with colored pencils. I'm using Faber-Castell Polychromos. After selecting just a few colors from my Faber-Castell Polychromos box, I did a color study using light pinks and grays for the flower and dark greens and blues for the cactus. The composition was the same as the previous sketch, but I felt the color was making the duality less visible. I was enjoying the colors of the study, but I think part of the message got lost. I didn't really like the colored pencil study because I think the colors are too vibrant and it might have taken some of the duality aspect of the work. So I think it's a cute drawing. I like the drawing, but it's not exactly what I was aiming for in this piece. So I think I will try to go back to something more black and white, like in this one, but with a little bit of color. Now I think I will try some Darren Graphitint, which is a colored graphite pencil. So it has color in it, but not as vibrant. And I don't know, maybe experiment with other materials. So I was hoping that maybe I would fill these pages with tests, maybe try different compositions before I move on to the final piece. These colored graphite pencils by Durant are also water soluble, but I wasn't planning to use them with water. The colors become more vibrant when wet, and I was aiming for the exact opposite, muted tones. I kept the same reference throughout all the studies because I really like this one, and I only slightly changed a few details and the position of the stem to improve the composition. As an artist, not a scientist, you have the freedom to adjust what you paint to better express your message. This time I chose a square format and added a slight tilt to the gradient background, which I also made darker and deeper. I really like the colored graphite pencil sketch. I think this type of contrast is closer to what I had in mind than this one. There's a little bit of color, but not as colorful. Here you can see the duality better than the other one. But I still could get the same result using colored pencils, regular colored pencils. I would only have to choose the gray ones and black and the shades with less vibrancy, and I could get the same result. But I think the colored graphite pencils, they already have this more muted tone that I was aiming for, so I think it was a good choice. But now I want to do a different study with ink, because I made some thumbnails in small pieces of paper, and I think ink will be great. And I was also maybe thinking about using the shape of the yin-yang symbol as a background, like in this thumbnail. I want the duality to be clear, but I don't know if I want this so obvious. So I will test this using ink, but also using a little bit of graphite or colored graphite only in the flower, like I did in this thumbnail right here. So there's a little bit of graphite. So let's see. Before starting my next sketchbook study, I had to change the cartridge of one of my favorite brush pens. By the way, one of the reasons why I love the Pentel Pocket Brush Pen is that you can keep using it forever just by replacing the cartridge. As I said before, in this drawing I wanted to move closer to the yin-yang symbol, using it as the background. I was also aiming for the high contrast of working in black and white, and I was excited about it. For me, there's something special about black and white drawings that might be related to the graphic quality of ink-based images. After all these sketches, I was already very familiar with the position of the petals, the cactus spikes, and the overall design of the flower. That familiarity with the subjects we draw is one of the reasons I recommend that you do this too. To sketch, to draw, and to paint is to notice. It requires presence and perception, and it will make you more aware of the things around you. Now the ink part is almost finished. I think I would like to add more lines to this transition to become more messy like this. And I still have to draw the inside part of the flower with graphite. I don't know, I feel it looks like tattoo art. I don't know if this is exactly what I wanted. This was already pretty much like a tattoo. I don't know, I will finish the flower with graphite. I will add more lines to this part and let's see how it will turn out. I used colored graphite in the flower and I think I really like these pencils. The difference in color can be very subtle or more intense depending on the pressure you apply and the amount of material that is imprinted on the paper. In this study, I felt that I was getting closer and closer to the duality I wanted to paint. It's so hot right now that I don't know if I'll be able to continue painting, at least at this time. Maybe I will wait the sun to go down a little. But let's talk about the ink sketch. I really enjoyed the result, especially the high contrast cactus. I think it looks amazing. And I think the flower, the graphite flower, I was afraid it wouldn't feel like it was the same plant, but I think it worked well. I like it, I like the result. What I don't like is that I think the background, looking as a yin-yang symbol, was too literal for my taste. I think I would like to go back to different solutions for the background, because I do want to have a dark background in the flower and a light background in the cactus. So I think I'm going back to this composition, this idea of having black and white, and I'm going to paint. I think I'm going to use only ink. So I have some India ink here. I'm not going to be using my brush pen because I think for this large area that I'm planning to use this hot pressed paper by Honey Harmony. It's an A3 size. I think for this size of paper, it's better to use a regular brush, like a calligraphy brush, instead of the brush pen. And I'm also going to dilute a drop of this in some water to have some light grays to use in the flower. So in the end, I think I won't be using any graphite, just to sketch. And I'm going to paint it all with India ink. In this piece, I used a hot pressed watercolor paper by Honey from the Harmony line. It's very smooth and it doesn't warp with ink and water. I sketched in pencil the edges of the petals, the main shapes of the cactus, and the points where some of the thorns grow. For the flower, I prepared two light grays, one of them almost transparent. Here, I'm diluting and testing the ink to achieve the gray I wanted. As I was painting the petals of this delicate flower, I was falling in love with the piece. This cactus is covered in sharp thorns, yet once a year it blooms with a huge, delicate flower. The ability to be soft and charming is part of its DNA since the beginning, just waiting for the perfect time to be exposed to the world for a brief period of time. While the flower draws you in with its breathtaking beauty, the thorns seem to warn you, "Stay away, don't touch me." But they are not separate things. The flower is the cactus, even though we don't see it throughout the year. In this piece, I try to capture both sides of this plant, its dark, rough skin with uninviting thorns, and the soft, pale petals of a flower that only lasts one day, while keeping its unity. As the Echinopsis cactus, we are complete only when we acknowledge that there are two sides of us that contribute to us being who we are, and we too should embrace both sides in unity. This flower lasts only one day, but I hope this artwork inspires you to be at peace with your shadow self for your whole life. I like this work so much that I was thinking about doing a limited edition of high-quality prints. If you're subscribed to Letters from the Forest, you'll be the first to know and you have early access. Letters from the Forest is my bi-weekly update sent from my Atlantic Forest studio directly to your inbox to keep you inspired and connected to art and nature. And I'd like to thank my patrons who support my work and this channel so I can continue creating art videos for you. I hope you enjoyed this video, subscribe for more and see you in the next one. Bye!